Mitakepi, Tayayahipi. This is a really quick overview of how to read, understand, use the curriculum that's offered under the language nest nature-based curriculum category. The Iapi Uahopi o Uspewo Awachi. These are activities that were designed in a nature-based context with small children, but that everybody enjoys doing, and that certainly beginning language learners would benefit from at any age. They're really fun and active and experiential activities. And they're also structured in such a like quick, easy, like on the fly kind of way that they're really great for families who want to do more language revitalization in their homes or who have chosen to make their families immersive in the language, which is the most important thing that we can do to save languages. So, Wopira Chichiapia, thank you to any family who has made that decision. It's not easy. And one of the things is you constantly need activities that are at the right level of language complexity, but that also involve culture, involve land-based experiences, help you to create as much of a traditional upbringing as possible for your children, and that something that all generations can participate in together. These are also really wonderful to use if you have an elder who maybe isn't really comfortable in a teaching role, but would do activities with you and speak the language, or especially if that elder has maybe not used their language for a long time and can remember things once they're in the situation, but to like translate on the fly is very unnatural. It's not something they grew up doing, and it's maybe been a long time since they've had a safe space to use their language. And so doing these active activities that have a relatively simple language structure, at least that have a progression from beginning language levels together intergenerationally can be amazing for culture and land-based experiences for relationship building and community building, but also for creating an immersion environment that is also an active and nourishing environment rather than a teacher-centered rote learning environment. So these can be picked up in any of those kind of contexts and be really useful. And you'll find that there's a huge selection here, always growing. There are places that are still being filled in. We're still working on developing things that have been conceptualized but haven't been completed. We post them as we're done with them, so it's always growing. So thank you for your patience. But these are just tons and tons of things. We have them structured in two ways. The primary way that we structure them is seasonally, things that make sense to the flow of seasons. Although you will note that the fall season um, is structured around beginning language learners, novice low level, because in our language nest, that's when kids start school. Your family, your language context may not be that way, and so you may need to make adaptations. You probably do need to make adaptations. You'll also notice that this work has all started in Dakota and Lakota. All of this is adaptable to other languages and to other contexts, and we would love to see you make use of it under the Creative Commons licensing permission that we've established. Um, but we did create it with this specific culture and the specific language as its underlying structure, and yours will be different. And also, you'll notice that there is no translation here. Translation is counterproductive. Immersion means absolute minimum use of translation. Um, in the case of endangered languages, we do not do dual immersion. If we can help it, we do not do bilingual. It's counterproductive. That dominant language, usually the colonial language, is going to be so powerful throughout the entirety of our lives that giving it space and acting as if it's a second language also doesn't align to the reality that we live in. So what we do is we carve out these tiny little spaces, a preschool, a classroom, a family, a neighborhood, a community center, whatever we can, that we create complete immersion in. And even that is really hard to maintain, and it's no match for the outside world. But you will notice that as you do adaptations, there is no translation here, and we won't do translations. Um, to be honest, it's also a bit of a data protection strategy, and I encourage you to reflect on what that means for your community. One thing I will ask you is please do not ever take any of these materials and upload them in any scrapeable or translation context other than the way we have offered them to you. Please do not upload our work to any generative AI software because those are not permissions that the elders and community members who helped to create these gave. They are not safe, respectful, and productive for communities, and those permissions have not been given. So we've offered these materials to you. Please use them in the manner that they have been shared, and please respect the Creative Commons licensing and the data sovereignty of the communities in question, and reflect on what that means for you and your community. But yeah, you will be making a lot of adaptations, and you are certainly free to make your own versions of these that are appropriate for your context. But a lot of, especially parents, but even new teachers or teachers with non-traditional backgrounds, often ask, "Well, how do I read this?" Because when they think curriculum, they think textbook. Thank goodness we do not create textbooks for preschools, but we also, under the Alive framework, don't use textbooks for anybody. So on this website, everything that you will find does not read like a textbook. It is not structured that way, which means you might be like, "How do I use this? What does this mean?" So I want to give you three categories of things that we provide here and then just demonstrate what a couple of those look like. So the three categories of ways to use these materials that we have, and I always write them down for my for myself. One is something that people are very used to from the school context, which is present and discuss materials. So this is like, you know, children's books that we may read together and discuss, little videos we may watch together and discuss. The key thing about using present and discuss type materials, which you'll find scattered throughout here, is that you want to be joining with the learners in exploring what we're learning, exploring what we're discussing. It should be a collaborative, conversational, co-learning experience rather than a lecture or, you know, dictating to them what they're supposed to remember, what they're supposed to learn, what they're supposed to understand. Asking curious questions, being curious yourself, um, prompting them to reflect, embracing their interpretations, their ideas, and, you know, interrogating those, exploring those further, being a co-explorer for them in the present and discuss type of materials, is what makes them really powerful. And it's what causes students to think, not just memorize. And that's how they gain that ownership and that love of the language. The second category I call practice together materials. This means that they are sort of explicitly teaching materials, but the reason that they are explicit is because we're practicing something that then we are going to use in the wild, in our daily lives, in our authentic interactions with each other. So think about, like, you know, getting ready for school in the morning in your house. We will practice and act out and practice the phrases and the actions that we will do. But then a day will come where we will just actually get ready and we'll use the language to do that. So we do sequenced, scaffolded practice together, explicit practice together of the language until it becomes familiar. We use brain science to make sure that that language is acquired. But then it gets used in the wild, in authentic situations, in authentic interactions, in our real lived contexts. And that's not curriculum. That's how the curriculum, that's why we use the image of the seeds from the flowers that catch the wind and they fly out and they take root and they grow in the wild and they spread. That's what that image is that we are nurturing something here. We're cultivating something here with intention and a certain level of planning and artificiality so that it will take root in the wild and it will become something that is naturally used. It will become something that is ubiquitous. That's a normal part of our life. And language acquisition will happen again for children naturally so that this language will return to being their mother tongue, their L1, not an L2 that they just learn at school. That is the gist of our vision here. So there are materials where we practice, 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 but the point is to implement them in the immersion environment that we are creating to live in. And then the final category are activities that where we do or make something together. These are heavily culturally defined. There are, certain arts and crafts projects that might be done across cultures because they're familiar, but we have put a huge emphasis on the actual cultural activities that we do, whether they be artistic, whether they be harvesting, whether they be food preservation, whether they be traditional handicrafts, whether they be traditional games, whatever those are. Um, again, those are culture-based teachings. Those are part of a natural immersive life that we're revitalizing. But we've sequenced and structured them, scaffolded them step by step by step with practice so that people who don't know them from the beginning, who don't speak these words, who don't know this game, who have never dried meat in this way before, can learn. It's pedagogical. It introduces them to it. They have chances to practice. They have chances to grasp it. And then it is perpetuated. So then it becomes a routine. So that's really what's key here. And there's a longer video on the webpage about that. Is that we are creating life routines that are going to be followed, that are going to be perpetuated, that are going to become the children's lived cultural experience. So for your community, for your tribe, for your language, you're going to define what those are. This is probably just more of the format that you might want to adopt rather than something that you would copy paste because your community is unique. So as you open each season, so the main way we have them organized is under seasons. There is a section down below that organizes the same information by early childhood development skills, if that is if you're working in a formalized environment, that depends on that. But for the most part, we organize things seasonally. And as you click each toggle carrot, I'm not sure what this is called, you can open each section and you can find the resources that we've created to go with that activity. And you will find that they are a mix. They go back and forth between being three different types of activities. So the first kind that we mentioned is the present and discuss. The co-learning about something that is already created. Although we hope that that leads into creating your own as well. It's not meant to be dictated, but here's an example of a resource that we created under that format. So it's a children's book. It has audio as well as visual. It has writing as well as the images, because of course the primary audience for this does not read or write yet. And so there are audio files here, and then there's illustrations of what the meanings are. And so this is a book about how to behave well or how to be a good relative. Positive, culturally aligned behaviors that we want to see within our family and within our learning environment. So we created this, and it's something that we would read together while we're learning. There's a lot of vocabulary in here, so it wouldn't be easily understood right away at the beginning of the learning experience. But we practice it, we act it out, we stop on each page and ask this students in the language, in immersion, when do we sleep? What time do we sleep? They have nap time in preschool. Yeah, okay, at 1 p.m. we sleep. So wait, show me how you're gonna be quiet. Show me how you're gonna play calmly at that time. Um, you know, oh yeah, here's some food. We make sure that babies and elders eat first. So today when we have lunch, before anybody eats, let's give some food to an elder. Let's give some food to a baby. How can we practice this out? Right. So this is a present and discuss. It's not just meant to be read aloud. It's meant to be interacted with and discussed. Again, there is quite a lot of language here, so that has to happen gradually and iteratively over time as the the learners are acquiring the language, acting it out and practicing it out and taking an interest in what each page means and what that would look like in the real world supports the language acquisition, supports them knowing what these phrases mean, because we've been acting it out. So that's an example of a present and discuss resource. Here's an example of a practice together resource. So this is really focused on language. It's also for the early times. It is multimedia, but it is really for practicing saying the words and acting out what they mean because we're going to be using them in our daily life. So this is a practice together resource. So so this cat is sitting down, right? Sit down. Iotake, iotake, iotaka. Iotaka, sit down. Iotaka, men's command. Iotaka, woman's command. So we practice this, we all do it, we act it out, we say it together. Then, of course, we'll come back and review it a bunch of times. They'll see the picture of the cat. We have quite a few of them. We have different animals that we learn from throughout this, which is one of the layers of integrating Dakota worldviews. Is learning from the other nations around us. Yunque, yunque, yuncaya, yuncaya, lay down, lay down. So we will all do that together. This, of course, is something we're going to use at many different times during our daily life. Ionka, ionkaya, ionke. Running. So that we'll practice running, right? So this is a language exercise, but it's also an embodied learning experience. And it's a multimedia resource that students can also practice on their own. It actually works on anything that swipes a smartboard or an iPad or a phone. But it's something that they become really familiar with. Okay, clean yourself, wash yourself, take a shower. So we learned from that. So we have a bunch of different ones like this, where we are actively practicing the language together. And then as you're going through, you're going to find lots of different cultural activities, some of which we've completed and we can share with you, like gathering of medicines. And this has a very structured, this has a lot of background, the really in-depth activity that we do. But these are, discussions that we will have and then activities that we will do together as we apply this cultural activity to our context. So these are not things that you will display to the students. These are not things that the students will read and recite or anything like that. These are stage notes for you, the facilitator, whether you're a parent or a teacher or grandparent. These are things you might do, interacting with your learners or those who are learning with you. There are quite a number of different ones that you might choose from. As you do the cultural or land-based or life-based activity together, these will be resources that you can pull up, you can either maybe print out or display, and then you will do an activity together. And that might range from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. Some of these might be all day activities. The really traditional demanding ones. There can be a lot of things to do. But these are things that you're going to do as a family or do as a group. Or so you are, again, co-learning along with whoever is with you. And from that, you are establishing routines that you can continue to do together that have culture, they have connections with the land, and they have language with them. They've just been introduced in a step-by-step format so that everybody can handle them. There's not overwhelm, there's not confusion, there's not disengagement because we don't understand or we don't know how to say that. So we're just scaffolding those to become life routines. And that's why we say this can be used with any learning context, any learning group, and ideally intergenerationally. So I hope you find these to be really fun, really approachable things. And I hope that you can embrace that co-learning environment that makes all language learners really feel confidence and ownership that however much they can speak now is amazing and that they will continue to learn, that they can believe in themselves as budding fluent speakers.